An hour ago, my husband laughed triumphantly as he threw me out onto the street after seizing all my access to our bank accounts. But now he's calling me, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, as a torrential downpour batters the windows of his home office in Palo Alto. The man, middle-aged with a developing paunch, sat in his leather executive chair, drumming his fingers on the polished mahogany desk. His eyes were locked on Clara, his wife, who sat calmly across from him. Throughout their 10-year marriage, Clara had always been known as the dutiful, obedient wife. She had built their fintech startup from the ground up. But it was Paul, always the one in front of the cameras, who claimed all its success as the fruit of his labor as the head of the household. Clara never objected. She preferred working behind the scenes, handling the coding, security systems, and finances. "Clara," Paul began, his voice attempting a gentle tone that couldn't hide its underlying urgency. "You know my real estate projects have been a bit slow lately. I need some reassurance about our family's cash flow. Open your laptop. I want to see the transaction history of the main account you manage." Clara slowly looked at her husband, her face a blank canvas. But inside, alarm bells were screaming. "This is it. The moment I've been waiting for." "What for, Paul?" Clara asked, her tone deliberately trembling, playing the part of a concerned wife. "The money in that account is our reserve fund. It's for the kids' college, our emergency fund. You already control the company's operational accounts." Paul sighed heavily, his pretense of kindness beginning to fray. "Clara, don't start. I'm your husband, the head of this family. Are you saying I can't know the extent of my own wife's wealth? Don't you trust me? Or are you hiding something?" This was Paul's signature move. Gaslighting, twisting the facts to make Clara seem like the one at fault. In the past, this tactic always made her back down. But not today. Clara looked down, feigning hesitation. She slowly reached for her MacBook, opened it, and typed in the password. The screen lit up, displaying an online banking dashboard with a final balance that made Paul's eyes widen. yen. Paul swallowed hard. He never imagined Clara had quietly accumulated this much liquid cash. The corner of his lip twitched, suppressing a victorious grin that was about to erupt. He was already picturing a lavish European vacation, buying the latest sports car, and, of course, spoiling Sabrina. "Good," Paul whispered, his eyes glued to the string of zeros on the screen. "Now, slide the laptop over here." Clara held onto the laptop for a moment. "Paul, you just wanted to see it, right? You don't need me to slide it over. I can just read the details to you." "Slide it over, Clara," Paul shouted, his voice rising. His hand shot out and snatched the laptop, pulling it from Clara's grasp. Wasting no time, Paul's thick fingers began typing furiously. He opened the account settings menu. Clara watched from across the desk, her expression crafted to look as panicked as possible. "Paul, what are you doing? Why are you in the profile settings?" Clara half rose from her chair. Paul smirked, his eyes still fixed on the screen. "Just sorting out the administration. This account is too large for a high-strung woman like you to handle. From now on, I have full control of this account." A small ping sounded from Clara's phone on the desk. Notifications flooded in. Notification: "The phone number linked to your account has been changed." Notification: "Your account recovery email has been changed." Notification: "Your password has been successfully changed." "Paul," Clara screamed, her voice now genuinely hysterical, a flair for the dramatic she never knew she possessed. "You changed all the access credentials. What am I supposed to do if I need money for groceries or to pay the bills? Are you insane?" Paul slammed the laptop shut. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and gave Clara a mocking look. The pretense of the kind husband was gone. In his place was a leech who had found its biggest host. "Groceries?" Paul laughed contemptuously. "I'll just Venmo you for little things like that. But this account, and everything in it, is officially mine. This is your husband's money. The result of my sweat, which you've been benefiting from all this time. It's time what's mine returns to its rightful owner." Clara stood up, her chest heaving. "That's money for my work, Paul. The systems I built day and night. Systems you built using the facilities of my house, my electricity, and your status as my wife." Paul retorted just as loudly. "Now, you'd better keep quiet, or you'll regret it." The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was glacial. Clara had just finished showering when she heard the familiar sound of a car horn from the front. Not Paul's car. It was Sabrina's. Clara walked to the second-floor bedroom window. Sure enough, A bright red SUV was parked neatly in front of the garage. Sabrina stepped out, wearing oversized sunglasses, a tight maroon dress, and a designer handbag that cost as much as a regular employee's annual salary. A bag Clara knew was bought with her husband's credit card. Paul emerged from the front door, greeting Sabrina with an intimate embrace on the porch. They didn't even try to hide it from Frank, their gated community security guard, who stood frozen in his booth, pretending to watch the street. Clara quickly changed into a casual t-shirt and jeans. Then, she pulled out a cabin-sized suitcase she had prepared and hidden under the bed 2 weeks ago. She dragged the suitcase down the stairs, the sound of its wheels on the marble floor making Paul and Sabrina, who had just entered the living room, turn around. "Well, well, well," Sabrina said, taking off her sunglasses and looking Clara up and down with disdain. "You've finally learned your place. Good. It's better if you know when to leave without having to be dragged out." Clara ignored Sabrina. Her gaze was fixed on Paul, who stood with an arrogant smile, his arm casually wrapped around Sabrina's waist. "Paul," Clara said, her voice low but sharp, "you brought this woman into our home while I am still legally your wife." "Our home?" Paul laughed, his voice echoing in the large room. "My house, Clara. Everything is in my name. And as of last night, the money is completely under my control too." Paul stepped forward, releasing Sabrina, and stood right in front of Clara. He pointed to the exit. "You are nothing now but a penniless beggar, with not a dime to your name," he yelled, veins bulging on his neck, his voice deliberately loud enough for the whole house to hear. Then he turned to the door, shouting for the guard. "Security? Frank, get over here." Frank hurried over from his post, his elderly face pale. "Yes, Mr. Evans? How can I help you?" Paul gestured to Clara with his chin. "Open the gate wide. Escort this woman out, and remember her face well. Frank, you are never to let her in again. If so much as the tip of her shoe crosses this gate, you're fired. Understand?" Frank swallowed hard. He looked at Clara with a pitying and confused expression. He knew very well who the truly kind person in this house was. It was Clara who always saved him a plate of food, who secretly bought him a new uniform when his old one tore, and who gave him a Christmas bonus far larger than required. But Frank needed this job to support his grandson. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Evans." Frank's voice trembled. He bowed his head low. "This way, ma'am. I'll see you out." Clara looked at Frank for a moment, her gaze softening. She nodded slowly, then she looked at Paul one last time. No tears, no hysterical screams begging not to be thrown out, just a cold, unreadable stare. "I hope you enjoy what you took, Paul," Clara said softly, almost a whisper. Clara turned, pulled her suitcase, and walked out the door. Behind her, she could hear Sabrina's loud, triumphant laughter. The sun was scorching as Clara stepped out of the tall iron gates, which Frank immediately closed behind her. Instead of hailing a cab or wandering aimlessly while mourning her fate as her husband expected, Clara pulled a pair of sunglasses from her pocket and put them on. Her steps were light. Her heart was pounding, not with sadness, but with adrenaline. She walked along the tree-lined street for about 10 minutes, away from the exclusive gated community and towards the main road. On a street corner was a premium, artisanal coffee shop, quiet and calm during these work hours. She pushed open the glass door, greeted by a blast of cold AC and the smell of freshly ground coffee. "Good morning. An iced Americano, less ice. No sugar, please," Clara ordered politely from the barista. After paying with a virtual debit card from an account Paul knew nothing about, Clara chose a seat in a corner near the window. From her position, she could see the street but maintain her privacy. She opened her cabin suitcase. It contained no clothes. Inside were only a few essential documents in a binder, an encrypted external hard drive, and a backup laptop, a gaming laptop with monster specs she used for high-level data rendering. Clara opened her laptop. When it reached the home screen, she didn't open social media or news sites. She opened a command line terminal, a black screen with green text constantly scrolling. Her fingers danced swiftly across the keyboard. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. The call was answered on the second ring. "Hello, Clara. You're out of that hell house." The baritone voice on the other end was relaxed but alert. It was Michael, her old college friend, now one of the sharpest corporate and IT lawyers in San Francisco. "I'm out, Michael," Clara said, sipping her cold coffee. A slight smile played on her lips. "Exactly as we predicted. He threw me out, brought Sabrina in. And most importantly, Last night he changed all the credentials on the bank account I showed him. Michael laughed on the other end. Your husband is an idiot. Sorry, ex-husband. He didn't notice the account you showed him was just a dummy. He wouldn't notice. His eyes were blinded by the 9 zeros of 95 million on the screen. He has no idea that the corporate banking system I modified has layered smart contracts. Clara glanced at the clock in the top right corner of her laptop screen. She opened a stopwatch app and started it. The timer began to run. So, the automated script is active now? Michael asked for confirmation. The moment he changed the password in email using the home IP address without biometric authentication from me, it triggered the first stage of the script. Clara explained calmly. She watched the lines of code on her screen, which now showed the status, executing. In 1 hour from now, the system will read the account as forcibly taken over. And since that account is linked to an auto-debit system I intentionally tied to a fictitious loan with a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, the system will perform a massive cleanup. All funds in that account, plus any account he tries to link it to later, will be completely wiped out. Brilliant, Michael praised. But are you sure he'll move the money? Paul is greedy and paranoid, Michael. He won't let money he stole sit for long in an account that's still legally in my name. Even with the password, he will definitely transfer the funds to his real estate company's main account this morning, while the banks are open and Sabrina is there, egging him on. And when he makes that transfer, the moment he clicks that button, the second security layer will activate, Clara explained, her smile widening. The system will lock his IP address, drain his balance, and automatically send the suspicious transaction history to the bank's internal monitoring system, which will immediately trigger an IRS audit for his company. Michael let out a low whistle. You're a demon, Clara. I love it. All right? I'll be waiting here in my office. The moment the bomb goes off, he'll be scrambling for legal loopholes. I've already prepared the digital forensic logs proving he knowingly accessed and transferred the money. Perfect. Thanks, Michael. I'll wait for your call. Clara ended the call and leaned back on the cafe's soft sofa. She took another sip of her Americano. It had never tasted so sweet. Clara's eyes were fixed on the stopwatch on her screen. 3 minutes passed. 40 minutes. 55 minutes. Clara sat calmly, watching the street outside. Occasionally, she tapped her fingers on the table, following the rhythm of the slow jazz music playing in the cafe. Exactly at the 1-hour mark, Clara's phone, resting on the table, vibrated violently. The screen lit up, showing Paul with a picture of him smiling arrogantly, a picture Clara hadn't yet deleted. Clara let the phone ring, savoring every second. The first call went to voicemail. A few seconds later, her phone rang again. The second call. Clara remained silent, her eyes fixed on the phone screen as if she could see the panic on the other side. On the third call, Clara finally swiped the green button. She put the phone to her ear but said nothing. From the other end, it wasn't an arrogant voice that greeted her, but the sound of strained, heavy breathing, followed by a loud, desperate groan. Clara, Clara, answer me. Please, answer me. Paul's voice was shaking violently, on the verge of tears. Hello, Paul, Clara answered, her tone flat, her voice as cold as ice. What's the problem? I thought I was a penniless beggar who could never set foot in your house again. Clara, help me. This is insane. What's wrong with the system? Paul sounded truly hysterical now. In the background, Clara could hear the sound of shattering glass and Sabrina's shrill screams and curses. What system, Paul? I'm just having coffee by the side of the road, Clara replied casually. The money. All the money is gone, Clara. The $95 million. It vanished. When I tried to transfer $1 million to my company account, the screen suddenly turned red. It said, "Security breach detected." Paul spoke rapidly, struggling to breathe. Then, my balance went negative. Not just the account I took from you, but my company's main account, the one I used to receive the transfer, it's frozen too. Clara, my money is gone. My company's balance. Wiped out, siphoned into some foreign account with a strange name. Clara smiled. The smart contract had worked even more perfectly than she'd expected. And what's crazier? My guy from the office called. He said, there's a notification from the banking system that my company has been reported for suspected money laundering because of an anomalous transaction this morning. The IRS is coming tomorrow morning. Clara, what did you do? Please, cancel it, Clara. I'm begging you. The sound of Paul's sobs was now clear. The man who just an hour ago had boasted and thrown her out like a stray dog was now weeping. pleading on the other end of the line. Clara took a deep breath, savoring the air that felt fresher than ever. "Paul," she said, her voice deliberately low, soft, but piercing. "What did you say this morning? This is your husband's money, the result of my sweat. It's time what's mine returns to its rightful owner." Clara mimicked Paul's words with a mocking intonation. "Well, now, what's rightful has truly returned to its owner. Do you know what karma is, Paul? You reap what you sow." "Clara, I'm sorry. I'll give you back the access right now. Come home, okay? Sabrina, I'll kick her out right now. I'll kick her out. Clara, please, fix the system." Paul wailed in desperation. "It's too late, Paul. That system was designed with no cancel button. Enjoy the rest of your day, because tomorrow, you'll have nothing left to save." Without waiting for Paul's reply, Clara pressed the red button, ending the call. She turned off her phone, removed the SIM card from its slot, then snapped the small card in two and dropped it into an ashtray on the table. The first act was over, but the main performance was just about to begin. They say a wife's instinct is sharper than any military radar. For Clara, the unraveling of her marriage didn't start that morning. It started 6 months ago, on a rainy Thursday night, because of something small, Paul's old iPad. That night, Paul had used the excuse of a sudden late-night meeting with a client from out of town. Clara, while cleaning her husband's office, accidentally knocked over Paul's old iPad, which was sitting under a pile of documents. The screen lit up, displaying a pop-up message from a secure messaging app that Paul had forgotten to log out of. The message was short, from a contact with no name, just a black heart emoji. "Paul, thanks for the gift. I love it. You're sleeping in my condo tonight, right? I miss you." Clara remembered how she couldn't breathe that night. Her hands trembled as she entered the iPad's password, a combination of Paul's birthday, which he hadn't changed in 10 years. With cold hands, Clara opened the chat. Her world collapsed. There were hundreds of disgusting messages, photos from secret vacations in Miami Beach that Paul had claimed were business trips, and proof of transfers of thousands of dollars every month. The woman's name was Sabrina, a freelance real estate agent who had been her husband's mistress for nearly 2 years. But what truly killed Clara's heart that night wasn't the affair itself, but a conversation they had 2 weeks prior. "Sabrina, Paul, how much longer are you going to stay with that stiff? You said you'd divorce her. Paul, be patient, baby. She's a free cash machine. The startup she built is booming. I'm slowly sorting out the legalities to transfer all the assets to my name. Once it's all clean, I'll kick her out. Just hang in there. We're about to become king and queen of the castle." That night, Clara went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned the shower on full blast. She cried her heart out under the cold water, mourning 10 years of loyalty that had been repaid with the cruelest betrayal. But the crying lasted for exactly 30 minutes. After her eyes were swollen, Clara turned off the water. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and wiped away the last traces of her tears. Her sadness had vanished, replaced by a cold disgust and rage. Paul thought he was smart. Paul thought he could play a systems analyst, whose daily job was to find loopholes and weaknesses in networks. "You want to play with assets, Paul?" Clara whispered to her reflection. "All right, let's play." From that moment on, the obedient Clara was dead. She began to plan a financial vengeance that Paul would never forget for the rest of his life. The next day, Clara met with Michael, her old college friend, now a lawyer specializing in business law and asset disputes. They met at an exclusive omakase restaurant in downtown San Francisco. "This is insane, Clara," Michael commented after seeing all the screenshot evidence Clara had gathered that night. "This man planned to bankrupt you from the start. We could sue him in family court and criminal court right now. Your evidence is solid." "No, Michael," Clara replied calmly, stirring her iced matcha latte. "If I file for divorce now, he'll fight back. He'll hire expensive lawyers using my money, and the process will drag on for years. The marital assets will be split 50-50. I don't want to share a single cent of what I worked for with a parasite like him." Michael raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So what's your plan?" "I want him to take the money with his own hands and destroy himself in the process," Clara said. "I need you to set up a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands under a fake foundation or something legal but not directly traceable to me." Michael nodded slowly, his mind beginning to process Clara's plan. "Okay, that can be done. Then we'll slowly transfer all my real assets, the startup shares, my savings to the new entity, so cleanly that Paul won't notice. And for the main account he's monitoring, we'll leave it, but we'll fill it with fake money." "Fake money?" What do you mean? Remember that dummy project I did for a private bank's server testing last year? I'm going to create the same system. We'll manipulate the transaction dashboard to make it look like the balance is $95 million. In reality, it's an empty account tied to a smart contract. Clara leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with intelligence. This account will be my poison. I'll create a secret loan agreement between this personal bank account and the shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. The clause will state that in the event of a forced transfer of access or a login from an unknown IP without Clara's biometric verification, all funds in this account, plus any other linked accounts, will be automatically seized as payment for a defaulted loan. Michael stared, a mix of admiration and fear on his face. Clara, you know that if Paul accesses that account and tries to move the money, he's contractually binding himself to that debt. The bank system will see him as responsible because he transferred the credentials to his name. That's exactly the point, Michael. Clara smiled coldly. I'll bait him. I'll make him feel like he's successfully stolen my password. The moment he clicks that transfer button out of greed, boom! The system won't just drain that account, but also his own company account that he'll use to receive the money. And because the balance is pulled overseas, the bank's money laundering detection system will immediately sound the alarm. The IRS will get involved. Michael leaned back and let out a soft laugh. Paul won't just be bankrupt, Clara. He'll be buried in billions of debt and hunted by the IRS. The execution has to be perfect. It will be perfect, Clara promised. And for the next 6 months, Clara carefully wove her web, waiting for her husband to willingly walk into it. That morning, the arrogant fly had finally been caught. Back in the present, in the lavish 2-story house Clara had just left, the air in Paul's office felt scorching hot even though the AC was set to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Beads of sweat dripped from Paul's forehead, hitting the screen of his expensive phone. The linen shirt that had looked so perfectly pressed that morning was now wrinkled. This can't be happening. It can't, Paul whispered, struggling to breathe. His index finger trembled as he hit the refresh button on his company's mobile banking app for the 100th time. Your balance. Negative $11,500,000. Temporarily frozen. Paul slammed his fist on the desk. Worthless bank. Garbage app. In the corner of the room, Sabrina, who was busy trying on clothes from Clara's closet, turned with an annoyed look. What's wrong with you, Paul? You're so loud. I'm trying to check out this Dior bag, but the supplementary card you gave me keeps getting declined. Is the limit maxed out? But didn't you just get $95 million from Clara? Hearing Clara's name and Sabrina's shopping demands, Paul's emotions exploded. He threw his phone against the wall, shattering the screen. Shut up, Sabrina, he roared, his thunderous voice making Sabrina jump and drop the bag. $95 million? My ass. The money's gone. Not just Clara's money, but my company's operating funds too. The money for the condo project. All of it. Sucked up by some demonic system. Sabrina's face went pale. What do you mean, Paul? How is it gone? You changed the password this morning. You transferred it to your account, right? That's the problem, you idiot. Paul tore at his own hair, his eyes red with panic and rage. When I transferred it, some weird notification popped up, and then my entire balance disappeared. 0. Even negative. And I can't reach Clara. Before Sabrina could process Paul's words, his desk phone rang loudly. Paul snatched it violently. Hello? Mr. Evans. It's me, James, your finance manager. The voice on the other end was hysterical, filled with the sound of people shouting. Sir, where are you? It's chaos here at the office. People from the bank and a joint IRS task force just entered the lobby. They have a court order to freeze our assets. They said our company is suspected of facilitating international money laundering because of an anomalous transfer this morning. The payroll account for the construction workers is frozen too. Sir, the workers at the project site are rioting. They're demanding their weekly wages. Paul's knees went weak. His body slumped onto the thick carpet, the phone falling from his grasp, leaving James's voice to continue shouting his name. IRS. Audit. Frozen assets. Money laundering. Those 3 phrases echoed in Paul's ears like a death sentence. If investigators started digging into his books, the missing money would be the least of his problems. The bribes, tax manipulation, and material price gouging he'd been doing to fund his and Sabrina's lavish lifestyle would all be exposed. He would go to jail. He would be completely ruined. Paul? Paul. Sabrina slowly approached, looking with fear at her partner, who was now a crumpled heap on the floor. Bankrupt. I'm bankrupt. Paul looked up, staring at Sabrina with vacant eyes. It's over. We're finished, Sabrina. I need to find Clara. Only she can fix this. When a luxury ship starts sinking, the rats are the first to jump. Hearing the confirmation from Paul's own mouth, Sabrina's self-serving mind worked quickly. Bankrupt. Hunted by the IRS. Reading construction workers. No. Sabrina didn't sign up for a life of hardship. She was with Paul because he was a walking ATM, not because of love. If the ATM was broken and causing trouble, it was time to run. I'll get you a drink, Paul. Just calm down, Sabrina said, her voice deliberately soft. Paul just nodded weakly, still rubbing his face, which was slick with cold sweat. Instead of going to the kitchen, Sabrina ran to the master bedroom. She opened the large closet where Paul kept his personal safe. Sabrina knew the combination, her own birthday. Paul was a fool, blinded by lust and overconfidence. With trembling, hurried hands, Sabrina entered the combination. Click. The safe opened. Her eyes lit up at the sight of a pile of gold jewelry, land titles, and several bundles of $100 bills Paul kept for emergencies. Without hesitation, Sabrina grabbed the largest Hermes bag from the bed and started shoveling the entire contents of the safe into it. Paul can fend for himself. This is enough for me to escape to Scottsdale and find a new victim. But as her hand reached for a box of Rolex watches, a large shadow fell over her from the doorway. What are you doing? The deep, hoarse voice sent shivers down Sabrina's spine. She turned slowly. Paul was standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Sabrina's bulging bag. Sabrina stammered, trying to hide the safe with her body. Paul, I was just securing our valuables. You said the IRS was coming to confiscate things, so I thought I'd get them out first. Liar. Paul lunged, grabbing Sabrina's arm so tightly she cried out in pain. You were going to run, weren't you? Leave me now that I'm in trouble? Let me go, Paul. You're hurting me. Sabrina struggled, her true colors emerging. Yes, I'm leaving. What am I supposed to do here? Wait for the police to come and arrest you? Wait for those workers to beat me up? What kind of man are you? You act so rich, but you were easily outsmarted by your own wife. You're bankrupt, Paul. Bankrupt. The word bankrupt was like pulling a trigger. Paul's patience snapped. His hand swung, and a loud slap hit Sabrina's cheek, sending her sprawling onto the bed. Her designer bag fell, its contents spilling onto the marble floor. Gold and dollars scattered everywhere. Sabrina held her reddening cheek, staring at Paul with pure hatred. You dare hit me? You animal, Paul. You pathetic loser. No wonder Clara was disgusted by you. Shut up, Paul cursed, breathing heavily. He bent down, frantically gathering his scattered wealth. This is my money. You have no right to a single cent. Get out of my house. Get out. Sabrina spat on the floor. She stood up, straightening her wrinkled dress. She no longer cared about the money. The important thing was to get out of this house before the authorities arrived. You don't have to tell me twice. Enjoy your hell, Paul, Sabrina said, sharply. She turned, ran down the stairs as fast as she could, got into her car, and sped away from the house. Frank, on duty at the gate, could only watch in shock as the red car recklessly drove off. Upstairs, Paul sat amidst his scattered money. Alone, broken, and it had only been 2 hours since he'd thrown his wife out. Across town, Clara had just left a premium phone store in a shopping mall. She held the latest model iPhone, complete with a new VIP number. She got into a waiting executive class Uber. The Four Seasons, please, Clara said calmly, leaning back. While enjoying the ride, Clara activated her new phone and restored her data from the cloud. The moment her WhatsApp became active, messages poured in, mostly from Paul's business partners who seemed to be in a frenzy, and 12 missed calls and voicemails from her ex-husband. Out of curiosity, Clara played one of Paul's voicemails. Clara, help me. Sabrina ran away. Clara, she left me. The IRS is in my office lobby. Please, give me the password to cancel the system. I'm begging you. Clara, they're going to seize the house if I can't restore the balance. I promise. I'll kneel before you. I promise. Clara pressed the stop button. She didn't need to hear the rest of the nonsense. Paul wasn't sorry for hurting her. He was only sorry he got caught and lost his money. The remorse of a greedy man is never from the heart. Clara's nimble fingers calmly typed a reply. Short, precise, and final. No insults, no all caps. Just an absolute statement from someone who had won the war. There is no cancel button. The money you transferred was a loan that is now legally yours. Enjoy your new fortune, my love. See you in court. Sent. 2 blue checks appeared immediately, indicating Paul was staring at the screen, reading the message that very second. Clara imagined him sobbing and groaning in the large house that was about to be confiscated. Clara permanently blocked Paul's number. Then she looked out the taxi window. San Francisco was bright that afternoon, as bright as her future. The heavy burden she had carried for 10 years was finally lifted. She closed her eyes, letting a genuine smile spread across her face. This was just the beginning of Paul's destruction, and Clara would make sure he drank the poison he'd brewed down to the very last drop. The smell of stale, instant coffee and stuffy air greeted Paul as he entered the local police precinct. His neatly pressed shirt from that morning was now a wrinkled mess. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were bloodshot. Across from him, a police officer looked at him with a furrowed brow, trying to make sense of the report coming from the disheveled man. "So, let me get this straight, Mr. Evans," the officer interjected, tapping his pen on the desk. "You're reporting that your wife, Mrs. Clara Evans, hacked your company's bank account and stole over $95 million? Not hacked, officer. She trapped me." Paul slammed the desk, making several people in the room turn. "She deliberately planted some kind of virus or phishing link in her own bank account. When I logged in and tried to transfer the funds, the system siphoned all the money from my receiving account. Arrest her. This is cybercrime. Theft." The officer sighed. Before he could respond, the glass door to the room opened. Michael walked in, wearing a perfectly tailored, expensive suit and carrying an elegant leather briefcase. His aura was calm and authoritative, a stark contrast to the frantic-looking Paul. "Good afternoon, Detective," Michael greeted politely, shaking the officer's hand before placing a thick folder on the desk. "I'm Michael Reyes. I am legal counsel for Mrs. Clara Evans. I heard my client is being reported for theft and hacking." Paul glared. "What are you doing here, you scumbag lawyer? Where's Clara?" Michael completely ignored Paul. He opened his folder, revealing a stack of neatly printed and notarized documents. "Detective, before you process this baseless report, allow me to clarify the facts," Michael said calmly. He pointed to the first document. "This is the digital log from the bank's server. As you can see here, no hack occurred. The access to my client's account was made using a valid password, which was then unilaterally changed from a computer. Can you guess whose IP and MAC address this device belongs to?" The officer looked at the paper. "It's an IP address from a gated community in Palo Alto, and the device is registered to a Paul Evans." "Exactly." Michael smiled slightly. "Mr. Evans here knowingly and deliberately accessed my client's account, changed all its security credentials, and then initiated a fund transfer from that account to his own company's account. The problem is, Mr. Evans wasn't thorough." Michael flipped to the next page. The account he accessed was tied to an auto-debit facility for an intercompany debt settlement. When Mr. Evans transferred the funds, the bank system automatically recognized him as the guarantor or the party that took over the account. So when the payment due date arrived, the bank system legally and automatically pulled it from Mr. Evans's account. That is a standard and automated banking procedure, Detective. Not a hack. Paul's face went pale. "That's a fake debt. Clara set that up to frame me. Prove that in civil court, Mr. Evans," Michael challenged, this time looking directly into the eyes of his client's ex-husband. "But for a criminal hacking report today, you have no legal basis. In fact, my client could countersue you for illegal access to personal data and theft of property." The officer closed Michael's folder and looked at Paul with a firm gaze. "You heard him, sir. This is a civil matter or the result of your own negligence in a bank transaction. We cannot process your report, and I advise you not to file a false report. That is a crime." Paul stood there, stunned, his legs feeling like jelly. He couldn't fight the data. He couldn't fight the law. He slowly backed away, then turned and practically ran out of the police station, a deepening sense of hopelessness consuming him. That afternoon, the lobby of the Four Seasons San Francisco was filled with elite guests enjoying afternoon tea. The atmosphere was peaceful, accompanied by the gentle melody of a classical piano. But the tranquility was shattered by the arrival of a man whose appearance did not match the luxurious surroundings. Paul burst through the revolving doors, ignoring the surprised looks from the security staff. His eyes wildly scanned the room, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His car had broken down on the I-280 after running out of gas, and he had no cash for the toll or parking. He'd been forced to abandon it. Then his eyes found her. Clara was sitting elegantly on a lounge sofa near a large glass window. She wore an elegant navy silk dress. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her face was relaxed and free of any burden. In front of her was a cup of chamomile tea and a plate of macarons. Across from her sat Michael, busy typing on his iPad. "Clara!" Paul's shout made several guests at nearby tables turn their heads. Paul practically ran to their table. The hotel security immediately moved, but Clara raised her hand, signaling to them that she knew the man and everything was under control. Paul reached their table, his legs giving way. He didn't care about his pride. He didn't care about the judgmental stares of the high-class guests around him. Paul knelt, his two knees hitting the thick lobby carpet. He prostrated himself before Clara's seat. "Clara, I'm begging you." Paul's voice was hoarse, broken by sobs he could no longer contain. His rough hand reached for the hem of Clara's dress, but Clara quickly pulled her leg back. "Don't touch me," Clara said coldly. Her voice was low, but its firmness made Paul tremble. "I'm ruined, Clara," Paul sobbed, his face looking up at her, tears streaming down his cheeks, which were grimy with city dirt. "My company is sealed. The workers are threatening to burn down my office. Sabrina ran away with what little cash and gold I had left. I have nothing left. Please, Clara. I know you have the code. Please, give me back my money. I promise I'll do anything. I'll grovel at your feet, Clara. I'm your husband." Clara slowly set down her cup. She looked at the man who had belittled her for 10 years. The man who had arrogantly thrown her out that morning, ordering the guard never to let her back in. Now, that man was writhing like a worm on the floor of a 5-star hotel. "You are not my husband, Paul. You are just a leech who happened to stick to my life for too long," Clara replied flatly, not a hint of sympathy in her eyes. "And about that money? Didn't you transfer it yourself? Why are you asking me for it? It's your money, Clara. I know the system is just holding it, right? Please, give me the release code so I can pay my taxes and my people's wages. After that, I will never bother you again. I'm begging you, for the sake of our past." Clara was silent for a moment. She glanced at Michael, who was smiling mockingly. Then Clara looked back at Paul. An idea entered her mind. The final step that would ensure Paul was truly finished. "You want the cancellation code?" Clara asked. Paul nodded eagerly, his eyes shining with hope. "Yes, Clara. Yes. Please. I'll give it to you. But on one condition." Paul immediately stood up from the floor, his body still bowed in a pathetic manner. "What is it?" "Anything, Clara. You want me to apologize in the newspapers? You want my car? Take it." Clara smiled slightly. "Your car, that's about to be repossessed by the bank." "No, thank you. My condition is simple." Clara signaled to Michael with her eyes. The lawyer immediately took 2 red folders from his briefcase and placed them on the table in front of Paul. "First condition," Clara said, pointing to the first folder. "This is the divorce agreement. I want you to sign it. Right now. It clearly states that you relinquish any right to claim conjugal properties, and this divorce is a result of your infidelity, the evidence for which my lawyer has already prepared. If you sign, the process will be finalized in just a few weeks without you needing to attend." Paul swallowed hard. A divorce with no claim to assets. But if he could get his multi-million-dollar company account back and escape the IRS, that was a small price to pay. "Okay, I'll sign. I'm not finished." Clara cut in. Her index finger moved to the second folder. "Second condition. This is a deed of relinquishment of rights to the house we live in. The house is in your name, but you bought it with money from the sale of shares from my first startup. I want that house legally returned to me." Paul's eyes widened. "That house is my last asset, Clara. If I give it to you and my company still collapses, where will I live?" "Not my problem," Clara replied cruelly. "You have a choice. Sign both of these now, and I will give you a flash drive containing the cancellation code algorithm, or you can leave. Go back to that house and wait for the asset seizure officials and the police to drag you to jail tomorrow morning. The decision is yours. You have 10 seconds before the offer expires." Michael held out an expensive fountain pen to Paul. Paul's mind raced. If he didn't sign, he would go to jail, and the state would confiscate the house anyway to pay his tax fines. But if he signed, he had a chance to restore his system, regain access to his company, and start over. At least he wouldn't be in jail. 10 seconds. Michael counted casually. All right, I'll sign. Paul's hand trembled violently as he took the pen. He quickly scrawled his signature above the line on the divorce papers. Then, with a heavy heart, he signed the deed relinquishing his rights to his beloved mansion. Michael quickly took the documents, glanced at them for a moment, and then nodded at Clara. Everything is legal and valid. Paul looked at Clara, holding his breath. It's done. I've signed everything. Where's the code, Clara? Where is it? Clara stared at Paul silently. She opened her elegant handbag and took out a small, sealed black envelope. She slid it across the center of the table. Paul snatched the envelope like a starving man who'd just seen food. He tore it open violently. Inside was a small piece of paper with a series of barcodes and a complex combination of letters and numbers. That's the master key, Clara said calmly. Use your phone. Open the bank's system portal that blocked you. Enter that code into the recovery field. Paul fumbled in his pocket, pulling out his phone with its cracked screen. His still trembling hands struggled to type the URL for the banking portal. Come on, he muttered to himself, cold sweat beading on his temples. His phone screen showed a red dialog box with the words System Locked. Below it was a field, Enter Master Key. Paul carefully typed each letter and number from the paper Clara had given him. FX900Z7B4. Paul hit Enter. A loading circle spun in the middle of the screen. Paul felt his heart stop. He imagined the screen would turn green, showing his company's restored balance, and he could finally breathe again. He imagined he would be a big boss again, even without Clara. The screen flickered, but it didn't turn green. It turned pitch black. Then, a giant warning in a blood-red color appeared, covering the entire display. The words were in English, and Paul knew exactly what they meant. Fatal error. Incorrect master key. Protocol. Permanent lockdown initiated. All remaining assets have been forfeited. Contact the authorities. Paul's phone emitted a long beep, and the application force closed. He tried to open it again, but the screen was frozen. The device was now completely blocked from any of the bank's networks. Paul looked up, his face no longer pale, but ashen white. His eyes were wide with disbelief as he stared at Clara. Clara. The screen turned red. It says permanent lockdown. You gave me the wrong code, Clara. Give me the right one, please. Clara sipped her tea, then smiled sweetly. So sweet it sent a chill down Paul's spine. The code wasn't wrong, Paul, Clara said softly, using the same gentle tone she had always used during their 10 years as an obedient wife. There is no cancellation code. I designed that master key to be a self-destruct trigger. The moment you entered it, the system was programmed to permanently lock all access and report the case as finalized. The money can never be recovered. There was a moment of silence. Paul's brain refused to process the reality. You tricked me, Paul whispered, his voice barely audible. Tricked you? Clara let out a small, elegant, but deadly laugh. I just made sure the transaction was complete. You wanted the money, right? It's been withdrawn. You wanted a divorce? The papers are signed. And yes, the house is officially mine. I don't have to pay for expensive lawyers or go through the hassle of splitting it with you in court. Thank you for your cooperation. Paul understood everything now. This trap had layers, and he had foolishly walked deeper into Clara's web, cutting off his own limbs until there was nothing left. He had surrendered his wife, his wealth, his freedom, and his home for a fake code. You monster! Paul roared, lunging over the table to strangle her. But Michael was already on his feet, firmly restraining the man. 2 hotel security guards who had been on standby rushed in and grabbed Paul's arms, forcing him back. Get this man out of here. He's causing a disturbance, Michael commanded the guards loudly. Paul was dragged away, struggling, kicking the air, and screaming curses at Clara. The stares of the hotel patrons pierced him like 1,000 needles, making him the most humiliating spectacle of the day. Clara just sat calmly, watching her ex-husband's departure with deep satisfaction. The cup of hot tea in her hand tasted better than usual. The San Francisco sky was beginning to darken when Paul finally arrived in front of the gates of his luxurious home. He had taken a taxi, and having no money, left his expensive watch the only thing Sabrina hadn't taken with the driver as payment. Paul's steps were heavy, his body numb, his mind blank. He just wanted to get to his room, lock the door, and hope that when he woke up tomorrow, this would all be a bad dream. But reality was waiting for him at the 10-foot-high iron gates. The gate was wide open. In the driveway were parked 2 government pickup trucks and a police car. Several large men in uniform stood guard, while other officials were busy sticking large red stickers on the windows. The stickers read, "This property is under the custody and seizure of the U.S. government. Bank of America." Paul ran, stumbling, into the yard. "Hey, what is this? Who are you? What right do you have to stick that on my house?" A man in glasses who seemed to be the leader of the group approached, holding a clipboard with a stack of documents. "Are you Mr. Paul Evans?" The man asked coldly. "Yes, this is my house. Get out of here." The man shoved the letter into Paul's chest. "We are from the curatorial team of the bank and the Internal Revenue Service. As a follow-up to your company's account activity this morning, our system detected a massive default on a due loan, along with indications of tax evasion over the past 5 years. As your accounts are empty, we have a court order to confiscate all fixed assets registered in your name, including this house and its contents." "You can't do that," Paul screamed hysterically. "This house, it's not in my name anymore. I just transferred it to my ex-wife." Paul realized that if the house was confiscated for his debts, he would lose everything. But if Clara owned the house, at least it couldn't be touched by his company's debt, even if he couldn't live there. Any transfer of ownership made after this seizure order was issued at 2 p.m. today is considered legally null and void, sir, the official explained, his face expressionless. "This asset is frozen. You must vacate the premises immediately." From the garage, Paul saw his SUV and the luxury sedan he used to drive being loaded onto a tow truck. All his wealth was being stripped away right before his eyes. Near the security post stood Frank. The old guard had changed into civilian clothes, holding a small backpack with his belongings. Frank looked at Paul with a complex expression, a mix of pity and a sense of validation that karma worked so quickly. "Frank," Paul's voice trembled. "Help me. Tell them to leave." Frank slowly shook his head. He walked closer to his former boss. "I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. I'm leaving. The officials told me to lock all the gates and give them the keys. You can't enter the house anymore either." Frank's words were an echo of the past. Less than 12 hours ago, it was Paul who had shouted that order. "You are never to let her in again." Now those words had come back to slap him in the face. 2 security officers approached, took Paul by the arms, and forcibly escorted him off the property. Paul didn't resist. He had no strength left. His tears were dry. He stood on the sidewalk outside the gates of his own home. An official closed the iron gate with a loud, echoing clang and secured it with a thick chain and padlock. Paul was thrown out onto the street. Alone, homeless, without a wife, without a company, and without a single dime in his pocket. The night began to fall, and a cold wind blew through his thin shirt. He stared at the dark house that was once a symbol of his arrogance. It was all over. The judge's gavel echoed 3 times in the family court of the city and county of San Francisco. That sound was the most beautiful music to Clara's ears. The air in the courtroom was cool. Clara sat elegantly, wearing a cream-white blazer and matching pants. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her face showed complete serenity. Beside her, Michael arranged the judgment documents with a satisfied smile. Across from them, the respondent's seat was empty. Paul was absent, not because he didn't want to attend, but because he couldn't. Her ex-husband didn't have a single cent to hire a lawyer, let alone the fare to get to court. The subpoena sent to his old address, of course, never reached him because the house was sealed by the bank. Furthermore, Paul's signature on the notarized divorce agreement prepared by Michael in the hotel lobby was solid evidence. Paired with the evidence of his affair with Sabrina and Paul's new status as a suspect in a tax evasion case, the divorce was finalized in record time. Less than a month. "Congratulations, Clara," Michael whispered, placing a copy of the decision in his briefcase. "As of this moment, you are officially a single woman again, free from the parasite." Clara took a deep breath, releasing the 10-year burden that had weighed on her shoulders. "Thank you so much, Michael. Without your brilliant legal mind in crafting those clauses, my plan wouldn't have been so seamless." They exited the courtroom and headed to the parking lot. The sunlight was bright as if celebrating Clara's freedom. "So, what's the next step?" Michael asked as they stood beside the new luxury car Clara had just bought this time, 100% from the money earned by her untouched, Singapore-based company. "The next step." Clara put on her sunglasses, her sharp eyes gleaming behind them. I'm going to clean up the rest of the trash. Paul is broken. But there's one more person who hasn't had her turn yet. Michael laughed softly. Sabrina, what are you going to do to her? You know how when arrogant people fall, they usually look for another branch to cling to. Clara smiled bitterly. I'm just going to make sure there isn't a single branch in this city willing to take her. Sabrina cursed loudly as she stormed out of a pawn shop on Market Street, slamming the glass door in frustration, ignoring the scornful look from the security guard. Damn it! Bankrupt, lying animal, Sabrina muttered, walking quickly towards a bus stop. She had tried to sell some jewelry and 2 Rolex watches she had stolen from Paul's safe the day she fled. Her plan was to use the money to rent a luxurious apartment while looking for a new sugar daddy. But it turned out the world was not on her side. The pawn shop owner had laughed in her face. The Rolex watches Paul had always boasted about were high-quality fakes. So was the diamond necklace he claimed to have bought in Europe. Its quality was rock bottom. All this time, Paul had been fooling her with imitations to save money. The cash she took was real, but it wasn't much and was almost gone after a month of trying to maintain her lifestyle. Sabrina refused to lower her standards. She continued to hang out at elite cafes in the financial district and Nob Hill, dressed to the nines, hunting for a rich, lecherous man. That night, Sabrina wore her signature tight red dress and entered an exclusive lounge where businessmen often relaxed. Her eyes immediately locked on a middle-aged man wearing a genuine Richard Mille watch. Sabrina had learned to tell the difference now. She approached his table, flashing her most seductive smile. All alone? Mind if I join you? She purred. The man looked up. At first, he smiled at Sabrina's beauty. But when he saw her face clearly, his smile vanished, replaced by a look of disgust. The man took out his phone, opened an exclusive WhatsApp group chat with hundreds of businessmen and executives in the Bay Area, and showed the screen to Sabrina's face. On the screen was a clear picture of Sabrina, along with her ID, her fake work history, and digital records of her conversations with Paul planning to seize his wife's assets. Below it was a bolded warning. Beware of this woman. Extortionist syndicate and specialist in destroying company assets. The blood drained from Sabrina's face. Ah, so you're that Sabrina? The man's voice was deep and mocking, the woman who conspired to get Paul Evans's company seized by the government. Did you think news doesn't spread in our circles? No sane person in this room would want to get near a venomous parasite like you. Several men at the next table started whispering and giving Sabrina scornful looks. Mocking laughter could be heard from various corners. Ma'am, you'd better leave before I call security. You're ruining the view, the man said, waving his hand as if shooing a fly. Sabrina held back her tears, her face burning with humiliation. She turned and ran out of the lounge into the cold San Francisco night. Clara. This was Clara's doing. The quiet woman she had underestimated had spread her data to every business connection in the city. Clara had truly closed all doors for her. Months passed. Sabrina's savings ran out. She was evicted from her small apartment for non-payment of rent. With her name blacklisted everywhere, no company or marketing agency would hire her. Eventually, Sabrina's pride was replaced by hunger. The woman who once carried designer bags worth thousands now had to stand all day, fighting exhaustion, working as a door-to-door salesperson for cheap kitchenware in a working-class neighborhood, earning a daily commission that wasn't even enough to buy a cup of coffee at the cafes she used to frequent. Rain began to fall, soaking the sidewalks of the Tenderloin. The night air was bone-chillingly cold, but an old, scruffy man seemed not to care. He sat in the doorway of a closed convenience store. His clothes were a dirty flannel shirt with missing buttons and torn pants. His hair was long, matted, and graying. He smelled of sweat, street grime, and despair. This was Paul. A year had passed since the night he was dragged out of his mansion. His life had collapsed. The police and the IRS took everything. His accounts were frozen. His credit cards were canceled. He was jailed for a few months for tax fraud, and when he got out, he had no one. His business friends blocked his number. His relatives, whom he used to give money to, now slammed their doors in his face, afraid of being infected by his bad luck or asked for a loan. Paul's stomach rumbled loudly. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. His trembling left hand held a plastic cup, hoping a kind passerby would drop in a coin. A luxury sedan sped through a puddle on the street, splashing dirty water all over Paul's body. He didn't even have the energy to get angry. He just wiped his wet face with his dirty sleeve. Suddenly, Paul's eyes were drawn to a giant video screen on the building across the street. The screen was showing an ad for a well-known business magazine. On that large screen was a face he knew all too well. Clara. His ex-wife looked radiant. She wore an elegant maroon power suit, smiling confidently at the camera. Below her face, in large letters, it read, Clara Evans, this year's most innovative fintech CEO, conquering the global market after hardship. Paul was stunned. He couldn't take his eyes off the screen. That face used to look at him obediently while making his coffee in the morning. That brilliant woman used to be his. The money, the success, the comfort, it was all in his hands. But because of his greed, because he thought he was smarter, he had destroyed it all. In his mind, Paul suddenly heard his own voice, echoing through time from the day he threw Clara out of the house. You are nothing now but a penniless beggar with not a dime to your name. Paul looked at himself, his torn pants, the empty plastic cup in his dirty hand. Hot tears began to fall, mixing with the rain on his face. His chest ached with so much regret. His own words had become a curse that had come back to strike him with cruel accuracy. Clara was now on top of the world, unreachable, while he had truly become a penniless beggar with not a dime to his name. Karma never loses its address. It walks slowly, ensuring its victim suffers every second of the way. That morning, there was a different feeling in front of the luxurious house in Palo Alto. The bank's seizure notice, which had hung ugly on the iron gate for a year, was gone. A taxi pulled up across the street. Frank, the middle-aged man who was once the security guard there, got out with a confused look. He straightened the collar of his old uniform, which he had kept. Last night, he had received a call from an unknown number, telling him to come to this address at 9 a.m. There's a job for you, the voice had said. Hesitantly, Frank walked towards the gate. Since the house was confiscated, he had been forced to return to his hometown and take odd jobs. His age made it difficult for him to find a new job in the city. As he stood in front of the gate, a gleaming black Mercedes-Benz S-Class slowly turned and stopped right in front of him. The rear window rolled down slowly. Frank's heart almost stopped when he saw who was sitting inside. Mrs. Evans. Frank stammered in disbelief, tears welling in his eyes. Clara smiled warmly from inside the car. She opened the door and stepped out. Hello, Frank. How have you been? Are you well? Frank immediately bowed his head, fighting back a sob that suddenly rose in his throat. I'm well, ma'am. Thank God, I'm well. Ma'am, why are you here? The bank put this house up for auction last month, Frank, Clara interjected gently, and I bought it back. In cash. Under my own name. All clean, legal, and with no connection to Paul's bankrupt company. Frank raised his face, looking at Clara with admiration. He clearly remembered how the bank had taken the house. It turned out Clara had deliberately let it happen so she could cleanly acquire the house without fighting over conjugal properties in court. His former employer's mind was truly extraordinary. So, you're moving back in, ma'am? Clara nodded. Yes. But this time, the house is too big for just me. I need someone I can trust to handle security here. Clara reached into her purse, took out a thick envelope, and placed it in Frank's hands. Here are the keys to the guard post. It also includes an allowance and a new uniform for you. Would you like to work for me again? I'll pay you double what the person who fired you paid. Frank's tears finally fell. His hands trembled as he accepted the envelope. He didn't care about his pride. He immediately knelt and repeatedly kissed the back of Clara's hand. Thank you, ma'am. Oh my God. Thank you so much. You are truly a good person, Mrs. Evans. I promise, I will guard this house with my life. No bad person will ever enter your home. I know, Frank. I trust you, Clara said, helping the old man to his feet. Now, please, open the gate. I want to go home. Frank nodded eagerly. He ran to the giant iron gate, opened the new padlock, and pushed both sides wide open. He stood at attention, giving the most perfect salute as Clara's car slowly drove into the garage. The morning sun streamed through the large second-floor windows, illuminating the master bedroom that had been completely transformed. Gone was the dark, heavy furniture left by Paul. Everything had been replaced with a modern, minimalist design in warm, calming pastel colors. Clara stepped out onto her bedroom balcony. She wore a soft silk robe, a cup of hot black coffee in her hand, its steam still rising. She leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the spacious yard. The clear blue swimming pool reflected the sunlight, creating dancing waves of light on the walls. The sound of birds chirping could be faintly heard from a mango tree in the corner of the garden. Peace. Such a simple word, but its price was so high. Clara slowly sipped her coffee. The perfect bitterness, rich in aroma, was a gift to the senses. She remembered the events a year and a half ago. The day she stood on a hot sidewalk, cast out with only a small suitcase. The day she was considered weak, worthless, a beggar. She smiled to herself. Sometimes people forget that silence is not a sign of weakness. Still waters often hide the most dangerous currents. Paul thought he was playing chess with a pawn. He never realized that from the very beginning. Clara had designed the board and written the rules. Her phone vibrated in her robe pocket. A video call from Michael. Clara swiped the screen. Michael's cheerful face appeared. "Good morning, CEO." Michael greeted brightly. "Sorry to bother you on your weekend. Just wanted to let you know our pitch to the Silicon Valley VCs last night was a success. They've agreed to a Series B funding round for your startup. The valuation is 3 times higher than last month." A small laugh escaped Clara's lips. "Excellent, Michael. Send the draft contract to my email. I'll read it after lunch." "You got it, boss." "Hey, wait. Are you comfortable being back in that house? No negative vibes or traces of the parasite left." Michael joked. Clara looked around. At the house that was once a silent witness to her tears and betrayal. Now, it was a silent witness to her resurrection and strength. This house was no longer a prison built by Paul. It was a palace she had reclaimed with her intellect. "None at all, Michael," Clara answered, her voice steady and full of conviction. "The air is so clean now. No parasites. Just a clear blue sky." Clara ended the call. She looked straight ahead again, taking a deep breath of the morning air. She had burned her past to ashes, and upon those ruins, she had built a new kingdom that no one could ever tear down. The game was over, and the queen remained the absolute victor.